Hello there! I hope this video finds you well and that you're enjoying the festive season. Today I want to talk to you about something which has bothered me for a while now, and something which I think unintentionally has a negative effect on the games industry as a whole. So I hope you enjoy. The games industry is extremely secretive. Developers and publishers and companies, they're all so secretive about what they work on, what they do, why they do it, how they do it. In fact, I'd easily go as far as to say that the games industry is the most secretive industry in all of entertainment. You see, the way games work is, after a developer has worked on a game for a number of years, and when they're sure that the game is comfortably on the way and that they have enough to show fans, they'll reveal their game in a trailer of some kind. Traditionally, they'll show off this trailer at a big convention like E3, but before then, the developer will keep everything that they work on a complete secret. They try their very best to avoid leaks. They don't tell journalists a thing. Their employees have to sign intense NDAs so that what they work on stays absolutely confidential. But even after a trailer is released, we could be left waiting for ages to hear or see more from them because most of the time they just go back into their secretive caves and go back into information lockdown. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why? What good does this actually do the industry? And why do developers think that they have to keep everything that they work on a secret? For example, if you ask me what Guerrilla Games is working on right now, I couldn't tell you. And I'm someone who keeps my finger on the pulse of everything in video games. I know that there's speculation that they're working on Horizon Zero Dawn 2, and common sense would say that too, given the monumental success of Horizon 1, but other than that, there's nothing I can tell you for sure. Let's compare this to the film industry. Literally, as soon as a film is in the works, we know about it. Sometimes before it's even in full development, we know that there's plans to make it happen. And in all fairness, I would actually argue that the film industry is too transparent when it comes to this, because God knows we all need to know about the Plastic Man movie that's in development. But in the film and TV industry, letting people know about plans to make something is a vital gauge to see if people are interested, or to start generating excitement. You see, this system of secrecy supposedly works because it helps build suspense, excitement, and then surprise at the reveal of a game. And it saves fans getting disappointed if something that they're looking forward to gets cancelled or changes somewhere in development. But what I think is that this system and this mode of operation for the whole industry has gone way too far. So much so that it's damaging the people in the industry and the industry itself. I believe fully that the time for transparency in the games industry has definitely arrived. To help you understand why I think it's such a damaging thing, let me give you some examples. The first example of how damaging this secrecy can be is when you look at video game journalism. A lot of video game journalism is red hot donkey. But that is, I think, because journalists have zero access to the people we need to have access to make good journalism. Even the best journalists at Kotaku, IGN, Game Informer, they all speculate, they comment, they review, but hardly ever do you get interviews with developers, profiles on studio heads, news stories that aren't just from press releases that the company that's being reported on has written themselves. I have every confidence that Greg Miller, for example, knows exactly what Guerrilla Games is working on because he's a well-trained journalist. But because of the systems in place in the industry, and because of intense NDAs, he and every other games journalist can't actually do their job. Because of this secrecy, all video game journalists are essentially glorified fans. But it doesn't end there. The secrecy also makes the industry so much more toxic than it needs to be. First of all, it makes players toxic because they know absolutely nothing about the work and the effort and the time that goes into making video games. Let's face it, gamers can be absolutely horrible people. They will easily condemn a studio or even one developer for making something that they don't agree with. But one of the reasons I think that they're like this is because they honestly don't understand that their games are made by real humans who work extremely hard. All they see is the developer's corporate badge that they put on. I mean, think about the reveal of Diablo Immortal. If Blizzard weren't so damn secretive about what it was they were making in the first place, they could have put the idea out for a mobile-only Diablo and gauged the reaction online from there. Also, if players knew how hard that they had worked on the game and what went into actually making it, they probably wouldn't have been so harsh on the developers when they revealed it. Developers feel this toxicity from secrecy too, because the truth is, some developers can't even freely admit that they work for the studio that they work for. That's how strict some of their NDAs actually are. So needless to say, the transparency that I'd like to see would mean that we'd get to know all that aforementioned stuff like what studios are working on and when, but also how games are developed, and the work that goes into them. Quite a few developers and people who sell games hate the idea of becoming more transparent. Well, I'm here to argue the total opposite. In fact, I think more transparency would be better for everyone involved in games. Oh, and by the way, this transparency wouldn't mean that they'd give absolutely everything away. By no means would they spoil plots or anything like that, but there would be no harm in developers keeping us in the loop with updates about their schedule, the stuff that isn't spoiler related like gameplay, and their work process in general. The transparency I want would mean that they would work work with journalists the whole way through development by inviting them to interview developers, investigate, and most importantly, inform people about what they're doing. They would tell us about how they make the games that they make. They'd be open about what they were working on pretty much as soon as they knew, because they'd realize that there's literally no benefit in keeping it to themselves. Honestly, I cannot understand this. Like, I dare anyone who's watching right now to give me a good reason that all that stuff is kept a secret. Also, if they were like that, they wouldn't make their staff sign such intrusive NDAs, so that people could actually talk about what they work on and where they work. Also, they'd occasionally work with fans to gauge reactions to things. A studio split down the middle on what to do for the next part of their game? Why not ask the fans what they'd like to see? And of course, they would still ramp up excitement when the game was going to come out, but I promise you, games would still sell just as well, if not better, if developers were open and honest about things. Okay, so how would this be better for everyone? Well, firstly, players. You would have more knowledge about how your favourite art form is made. You'd be able to get excited from earlier on about a game that's coming out. You'd know realistically how long you'd have to wait for the game, because Obsidian would tell you outright that that game that they're making is like 3 to 4 years away. You'd get to know and appreciate the people who make the games that you play. From a consumer point of view, you'd be able to tell a lot easier if a game is for you or not, because the developer would be so open about what it actually is. All of this doesn't mean that you wouldn't ever feel excited or surprised. In fact, you still would. You'd just be able to form educated opinions at the same time as getting excited for longer than you do now. Alright, so developers. How would this be better for you? Well, for starters, you would be able to freely admit that you work where you work. You wouldn't have to watch every word you said because you could be sued or lose your job for slipping up. People would appreciate your work more. People would know what your role is. People would understand the effort and the time that you've put into making something. And as a result of all that, people who play games probably wouldn't hound you out on the internet because they would understand that you're a human, not just a code pusher. Publishers, what about you? Well, you wouldn't have to rely on E3 to show off your games anymore. You could do it in your own time, your own way, revealing it whatever way suits you best. And also, you might not be viewed as corporate scourges of the gaming industry if you adopt an honesty policy. Oh, and I should say, publishers are probably the ones that oppose this the most, because it means that they would have to be on their best behaviour at all times, because we would actually get to see how they treat the studios that they own. Marketers and PR, what would you get out of all this? Well, you would be able to sell a game on its features. You wouldn't have to rely on the classic tropes of the world is a character, no two playthroughs are the same, your decisions matter, and of course the classic, play your way. Instead, we'd hear legitimate game design terminology that we'd understand. PR, you would have more interesting stuff to do too. You'd get to give access to developers for journalists, you could arrange more events, more previews, more interviews. Your job would be more than people just asking you, can I get a code for Zombie Death Mortals 65? And finally, journalists. I mean, I really shouldn't have to convince you of this. You could do the most basic part of your job. Ask questions. Games journalism has to be one of the only forms of journalism where the journalists don't actually get to ask questions. Furthermore, you too would gain a huge amount of knowledge about how games are actually made, because, let's be honest, most of you know squat about how games are made. This way, you could do more than speculate, theorize, comment, and review. This way you could inquire, you could interview, you could investigate because studios would let you in the door. You could reinvent yourself as a form of journalism that demands respect. Alright, so there it is. Hopefully you now see why all the secrecy, all the NDAs, all the corporate lying, it's just so damaging for the games industry. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed the video. So if you have any questions, please do comment down below. In the meantime, please make sure you subscribe to catch more videos just like this one, and hit that bell icon to be among the first people to be notified when we upload something new. Also, check out our monthly podcast, Podcoping, which is linked down in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope you and yours have a beautiful Christmas together. Tune in next time.